If your shoulders are stiff, tight, achy, maybe even painful, you're in the right place because I'm gonna show you the 3 best exercises you could do to help your shoulder. What's up guys, Dr. Nick here. In today's video, we are going all over the shoulder complex. In this video, we're gonna be focusing on it from a mobility standpoint. Now, when it comes to the shoulder, it's a very, very mobile joint in the body. It's a ball and socket joint. So it's like a golf ball on a tee. So it has a very mobile aspect to it. But ironically, even given how mobile it is, a lot of times we lack mobility restrictions in the shoulder complex that leads to a lot of compensations that go on that typically spring up some pain and issues, feelings of tightness and stiffness. We're gonna be focusing on 3 different areas of the shoulder complex that are commonly limited that lead to a lot of these problematic issues that we have in the shoulder, like shoulder impingement, can lead to arthritic changes over time. So we're gonna be focusing on the front of the chest muscles. We're gonna be focusing on the side of the body, the lat muscles, and then we're gonna be focusing on the back of the shoulder, the posterior capsule of the shoulder. Now, those 3 areas are the most common. Are there other restrictions in other areas of the body, like the thoracic spine, issues at the hip that could actually lead from oblique line connections that can contribute to it? Of course. But we're gonna be focusing on the upper part of this, and we're gonna be addressing it from a mobility standpoint. Let's get to it. This first stretch up, we're gonna be focusing on the chest muscles that would limit shoulder external rotation, because the chest and the pec muscles does shoulder adduction or adduction of the arm and internal rotation. And it also flexes too. But it's the opposite motions of this. So when I bring my arm into shoulder external rotation, you could see how all of this would be stretched. So when we're sitting all day at work for our job, all this stuff tends to get stiff and tight. So we gotta loosen it up. So I'll be using just a bar right here for some support, where I'll have my elbow on it for a little bit of support, and my arm's gonna be in this position. So it's almost like a stop sign position, 90 degrees at the elbow, 90 degrees at the shoulder. And then the good thing about using a bar like this is you can angle your chest how far you wanna go into the stretch. Some people might be very, very limited, where if you just lean like this, you'll already start to feel it. Versus like if you have to go deeper and deeper into it, then you start to feel it. But it's the concepts here that you can apply this to really anywhere that you can actually do a stretch to get your arm in this position. You don't necessarily have to be down like this. I could apply that same concept and be at my stall bars like so, and just be in this 90-degree position. So it's the concepts that are the most important part of this explanation right here. So I'll just be demoing it here. So I'm here like this, and the concept we're gonna be using is a pails and rails contraction. So I'll be supporting through here, and I wanna lean my chest down until I start to feel a stretch. And once I start to feel a stretch here, I wanna turn away from my arm. That will improve the stretch aspect to this. So I'm here, I feel the stretch right there, and I'm just gonna turn away a little bit like that. And right there, I start to feel the stretch all through here. So the stretch period, we're gonna just hold this for an example of 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, that's when you would wanna do the pails and rails contraction. A pails contraction is we'd be pushing down, creating isometric force through the shoulder complex, and then the rails contraction is trying to lift off and get further into the range of motion. The concept of applying isometrics in these positions is to teach the body how to own new ranges of motion versus just stretching for 30 seconds and then being done. You're not teaching the body and the nervous system how to control that motion. So stretch period, pails is pushing down through the object you're gonna be using, and then the rails contraction is gonna be lifting off. So I'm here, I go down, and I turn away, and I start to feel this stretch. Now imagine the stretch period was gone for 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, I'm gonna start pushing down through this really, really hard, and I'm building up to 10 seconds. So I hold that for 10 seconds, 9, 8, and I'm pushing down, and I'm really feeling my chest working. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right after the pails contraction is done, now I'm gonna try to lift off, and I do this for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then relax. And I feel all the back of my shoulder working when I do the rails contraction. That would be 1 cycle, and then I repeat that entire cycle again. So it would be a 30-second stretch, 10 seconds pushing down, and then 10 seconds lifting off. The idea is we're producing isometric strength in those positions. Now when I do the rails contraction, I'm using the opposite side of the joint to again teach the body how to own these positions. So the concept is hold it for a stretch, push down for 10 seconds, and then lift off for 10 seconds, ultimately getting a much more effective stretch to this chest region, which will then improve shoulder external rotation versus just holding it for a little bit of time. Now, some things you want to be aware of when you're doing this stretch is that the forced positions. Oftentimes I see people that are just getting in this position and just cranking down like this, their whole shoulder's going behind them, and it's not effective. It's creating more irritation. You want to be specific with this and have more attention to detail when you're doing this. You want to just lean your chest down. It doesn't have to be a lot. If you're doing it properly, you can get a good mind-body connection to just lean the chest forward a little bit to feel a nice pull. And then from there, the money is when you rotate away a little bit, that's going to improve that shoulder stretch versus just dumping the shoulder down. You want to keep the shoulder back as you do that to feel that stretch. Once you're in the stretch, you then perform that concept. So it's a stretch for a period indicated, then you push down for 10 seconds, and then you lift off for 10 seconds. Ideally, I like to do a 30-second stretch, 10-second push, and then 10-second lift off for about 4 rounds to accumulate about 2 minutes of time under tension. But you can manipulate that given time parameters and everything. You could hold it for 2 minutes and do 1 cycle of pails and rails. You could hold it for 45 seconds. You can manipulate it to fit whatever you're doing, but it's the concept that's the most important part of this stretch. The next stretch up, we are going to be doing a sleeper stretch. This classic one, we're going to be targeting the posterior capsule of the shoulder that is really limited in a lot of shoulder issues, which then contribute to things like shoulder impingement. So with this one, we're going to apply the concepts of pails and rails too. So the pails and rails is simply just you're going to be stretching for a period of time. You're going to be doing an isometric contraction in one direction and then an isometric contraction in the other direction. So here's how it looks. So you're in this position. Now the sleeper stretch position is you're going to be rolled on to that shoulder. That's going to stretch it even more versus if I was laid back like this and I went down. That's going to be less of a stretch versus if I'm rolled onto it. When you're rolled onto it, it also does a good job at just pinning the shoulder blade down so it doesn't move and compensate. So from here, my elbow's at a 90-degree angle, and then from here, I'm just bringing my arm down gently until I start to feel a stretch in the shoulder complex. Now, wherever you feel it, you don't want to jam it down and just irritate it. You want to just go to the point where you feel a stretch. Now, this would be the stretch position, and then the pails contraction isometric is going up into the hand, and then the rails contraction is peeling away from the hand. We want to create those isometric contractions in a range of motion so you start to teach that body how to control that. So from here, I'm rolled onto my shoulder blade, and I push down until I start to feel a stretch. I feel it all into the back of the shoulder. Now I would hold this stretch for a period of time. Say the time elapsed that I was holding it for 30 seconds as an example. It went away, okay? Now I'm gonna push up. So I'm pushing up like this, but I'm not moving my arm. So I'm pushing up, I'm holding that for the isometric, and I'm building up to my safest, greatest effort, holding for 10 seconds. And then after that, I'm gonna peel away for the rails contraction. So imagine the pails contraction is done. Now I'm gonna peel away as hard as I can from my hand, and I'm gonna hold that, and I'm gonna just think mind-body connection to fight, to go further and further and further down for 10 seconds. After that 10 seconds, I relax. Now I'm in a new range of motion, and I repeat this. Usually I like to have something to support my head here, but I don't have anything, so my head's coming down like this. But something up like this so that your neck's not straining. So from here, now I'm in a new position, and I would actually repeat this actual sequence. Let me actually get this to support my head now. I'm in this position after the first position, and then I would apply that same concept. So imagine if we're doing a 30-second stretch, 10-second contraction, and for a pails, 10 seconds for the rails. You would do about 4 rounds, so I like to get 2 minutes of time under tension to manipulate the tissue, because that's what it needs. So from here, you would apply that same concept. Now, the biggest thing to know is when you're peeling away is not to just dip your shoulder down and try to get further into the range of motion like this. You want to think about pure rotation so that you're moving with intention. And then also, if you're doing a rails contraction from this position and your gap is huge, you already own this position. So you can get further into the range of motion, and the peel off should be very minimal. So that means if you're peeling off like this, you already own this, so you can get yourself further and further into the stretch. Then you hold this for the stretch, you perform the pails, which is up, pails contraction, and then the rails is only a little bit of a gap. You're working at that end range, because we need to work at end range to get the mobility good versus just working into the range of motions that we have. Then I would relax. Now I'm in a new position. Stretch goes for 30 seconds. Pail is going up into my hand, holding it for the isometric, and then trying to peel away. So now you can see the gap is a lot more limited than it was from the first. And then I'm in this position, and then I repeat. And the idea is to get further and further down. So it's the concepts to apply throughout this. You lean onto the shoulder, you get into a stretch period, hold it for the stretch, perform the pails, perform the rails, get into a new position, and repeat, stretching the shoulder into internal rotation. So the next stretch, we're gonna be focusing on the lat muscles. The lat muscles does shoulder extension, adduction, and internal rotation. So when we stretch it, we gotta put the muscle on the opposite motions, on length. So we're gonna be in this position. That's gonna be flexion, shoulder, a little bit of shoulder abduction, and external rotation. Now, I'll be using a PVC pipe for some guidance and support throughout it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. You can imagine you can have a towel. You get the towel taut and you just hold the towel. It could be anything to get your arms in this position. But you'll need some sort of countertop, table, bench, anything you could put your elbows on here like this, because we're gonna be in this position. So imagine I'm gonna be holding the PVC pipe like this, palms facing me, that's gonna be an external rotation, and I'm gonna be rocking down like this. That's gonna be stretching all of the lat muscles. Now, using a towel or a dowel like this is allowing us to keep our shoulders in this position, because as you go further and further in, we're gonna want to default into shoulder internal rotation because we're stretching it. So it's gonna default into that because it needs some slack, but we wanna put it on stretch. We just wanna have good mind-body connection of what we're actually stretching and feeling. So from here, I'm gonna get my forearms parallel to each other, and I'm gonna be rocking my butt down to my heels, like so. Now from here, I wanna think about rounding my upper back and my glutes. So I'm thinking about tucking my tail with the pelvis, and then I'm thinking about rounding my back. That's gonna stretch the lat even more. Now from here, I feel the stretch all through right here. So you wanna hold this stretch for a time indicated. Now we're gonna perform a contraction with this as well, and the contraction is pushing the elbows down through the table. So imagine I'm not moving, but when I contract isometrically, I'm thinking of doing this. But I'm not gonna be moving, I'm just thinking of doing that. So I'm holding this for the stretch period. I round my back, hold this. So I feel it right into the lats of the area I was just pointing to. My forearms are parallel to each other, I got the position right. Now imagine the stretch period just went down, so it was 30 seconds. After this, I'm gonna push my elbows through the table really, really hard. So I'm gonna hold that contraction for 10 seconds. After that, I wanna relax, and then I wanna sink further into the stretch, and then I repeat that exact sequence. So I hold this for a stretch period, say 30 seconds went by, and then I'm gonna push down for 10 seconds. 10, 9, hold, and then 10 seconds went by, relax, and I'm gonna go further down into the stretch. And then I wanna repeat. So I hold this for the stretch, push down, and the idea is you wanna get further and further down after each contraction. We're performing the contractions for a couple reasons here. One, to teach the body how to get activation in new ranges of motion as you're going further and further into it. But then also it's for a post-relaxation, a post-contraction relaxation phase where the muscle kind of releases tension and stiffness and guarding because you just put some tension into it so it reflexively relaxes. So it allows you to go further into the motion, ultimately improving flexibility over time. So the concept with this is making sure you're doing the form correctly, not just rushing into it, and also keeping in mind your shoulder position like this. Now, if the shoulder is painful or really discomfort when you're actually in this position, you could play with how close your arms are together. You might have to collapse in a little bit like so that you can get actually further into it. Because the more your forearms are parallel or away from each other, it's gonna feel much more of a stretched and biased to the lat. But you don't wanna totally collapse in like this where you're not getting any stretch to the lat. You wanna keep your forearms parallel to each other as much as you can to actually get some biased work to that lat. So there you go. I hope this video gave some insight and value to understand these 3 main stretches. And if you apply these 3 main stretches, it could do a lot of good. It just has to be consistent over time. These exercises focused on improving the 3 major movements of the shoulder complex: shoulder external rotation, internal rotation, and flexion. If you just work on shoulder internal and external rotation, a lot of your shoulder issues would get a lot better. But we tend to just focus on things that really aren't moving the needle forward. When you do these types of things consistently and build off of it by teaching the body how to improve ranges of motion, it could really do the body really good. But you just gotta do that. Now this is one concept of just pails and rails or isometric contractions into the exercises, the 3 main mobility exercises I did in here, but they would have to be followed up with some activation drills and eccentric training after that, so that you can then continue to teach the body on how to actually own different ranges of motion. Because the first concept is opening up the range of motion and getting into new ranges of motion. Then once you're there, you have to teach the body even more how to function there. And then you build off of that. So these ones just focused on the opening up phase, and these are 3 major ones that I use all the time with clients, and they could do a lot of good. And if you did find value in this video, I greatly appreciate it if you support my channel, subscribe down below, like this video, leave any comments down below, and I really, again, hope it was valuable. So until next time, this is Dr. Nick.